Hi, WMCM here. Just like to talk today a little bit about justice, and in particular about the concept of evidence. The thing I have a bit of a problem with in the modern justice system, and it's true of most Western justice systems. It's true of Europe, it's true of America, it's true of Britain, New Zealand. All of the big Western powers have this thing called procedure and what is and isn't admissible evidence. My personal view on this is that there is or should be no such thing as inadmissible evidence. Evidence is evidence. It doesn't matter where it came from. If it is in fact relevant, it should be presented in the case that it is relevant to. And there are obviously things that immediately strike you as a bit silly. There's lots of stories about drug arrests where you've got the wrong type of warrant, and you searched up until the borderline between House A and House B, and it turned out that the drugs were in House B, but the warrant only allowed you to go up until the rubbish bin or something, and they're in the next house's rubbish bin or what have you. And then these things, they basically create these technicalities where criminals can get off crimes because the wrong sort of paperwork was filled in and the wrong sort of procedure was followed. Now, obviously we do need some degree of procedure, and we do need to follow those procedures and encourage in particular the police to adhere to the warrants that they were issued. However, there shouldn't be anything such as inadmissible evidence. If evidence is real, if it is presentable, it's valid to that trial. So you can go out and say, well, what happens if you take away the inadmissible evidence? The police will run amok and they'll go and they won't need warrants, and they'll just barge into people's houses and take everything, and there's no procedure. Well, that's not true. You can actually moderate those sorts of behaviours through penalties reasonably easily. If it turns out that you've conducted an illegal search of a property in order to get evidence, it's still evidence. It's still actually valid that you've found the stolen goods or the kidnapped child or whatever it is. That's still relevant. You use the evidence. You don't dismiss it. You use the evidence in the trial for the way it was, actually presented to. Let me say that again. You use the evidence in the trial that it's actually relevant to. But what you do as well as that is you also launch a second investigation into the way in which that evidence was obtained. And if it turns out that the procedures weren't followed and the police broke into somebody's house and didn't actually have the appropriate warrant or breached the rules of the warrant that they were given, then you launch the second trial to prosecute the police for their behaviour. And that way you stop them, just going off willy-nilly and doing whatever they want. You still control the police in the appropriate manner, but you don't discount the evidence that was gained illegally or, have inadmissible evidence because it's not actually a relevant concept. If something exists and it proves or suggests a fact has occurred, that should not be hidden from the court. The court's there to determine, fact, and if it's there, and if it's actually suggesting that certain facts occurred, then that's entirely relevant. That's entirely appropriate for the court, the jury in particular, to hear it from. And I honestly don't know. I've never had a good legal explanation as to why inadmissible evidence exists. It's either evidence of a fact or it's not evidence of a fact. You can't really live in this middle ground where it is evidence, but it's a special type of evidence which isn't relevant because of the way in which it was obtained. I mean, it's almost common sense, isn't it? And obviously you don't want people going around conducting illegal searches, but there are other ways to control that. So I think the rules of evidence in our justice system probably need to be reviewed just a little bit, and it can be, I say our justice system, I really mean all justice systems, especially in the West. We don't have the need for these sort of people getting off on technicalities, and every time you hear about that murder trial that went horribly wrong because of the murder weapon wasn't found correctly because of the search warrant was in the wrong mother's name or whatever, it's just common sense that this shouldn't happen, and there are ways around it, really simple ways, and I think we need to make that happen. WMCM signing out.